Today, eminent experts, our chief guest, Honorable Dr. S.S. Mantha sir and Dr. V. Kolhe sir, the mentors of DYP University. Dr. Kolhe sir is a former Chancellor of University of Mumbai and former Vice Chancellor of Amity University, Mumbai. Dr. Mantha sir, our speaker for today as well, was a former chairman of the National Regulator AICTE and implemented several e-governance initiatives and facilitating regulations over a 6-year stint. Earlier, a professor of robotics, control theory and AI at VJTI, he now occupies the Emeritus Chair. His work at IBM, New York, and TIVOLI is also noteworthy. He has more than 280 publications in national and international journals and conferences, besides authoring 3 books. He is the author of NVEQF, now renamed as the National Skill Qualification Framework and the Regulation for Blended Learning. He was a member of Karnataka Skill Development Authority and advisor to the government of Andhra Pradesh. He was the Pro Vice Chancellor of SNDT Women's University, the Chancellor, KL University, both of which he served for 3 years. Further, he served as the CEO of Mahapreet Startup Knowledge Center, a government of Maharashtra company, for 1.5 years. Currently, he is an adjunct professor at National Institute for Advanced Studies, Bangalore, and the Chancellor of RB University, Nagpur. He is also the chairman of Technical Committee, National Cyber Safety and Security Standards, and IT expert for the government of Maharashtra. In an illustrious career that spans for more than 40 years, Dr. S.S. Mantha sir has held several important positions both in academics and public administrations. The experts we will hear them shortly. May I request Dr. Dhumane sir to please step forward and felicitate our chief guest for today. Yes, sir. सर थोड़ा स्क्रीन पर था मुझे दिसे
Yeah.
सर बस
ठीक है.
सर please sir, humble request.
So, good morning, my colleague Dr. Kolhe and all the other participants of the university and outside. I've been asked to speak on the role of AI in education, and in order to do that, I could say that AI is used in, personalized education. AI is used in healthcare, things like that, and tell you a reference under which different applications use AI as a tool. But that would not get you the context in which we are talking. So it's necessary to understand the artificial intelligence itself before talking about its applications in education or any other sector. And it's very important to integrate technology with human expertise and empathy in educational settings. What AI can do is not, provide that empathy which human beings have. So therefore, it's necessary to integrate technology with human expertise and empathy, especially when we are talking about the educational setting. And one important aspect of whether it's human intelligence or artificial intelligence or whatever that is, we need to understand the relationship with its, attribute. Like, for example, whatever you do must be accurate, must be precise, and so on. So therefore, akkalani mahati vidyani, akkalani mahati buddhihi, akkalani mahati sthitihi, akkalani mahati mati. Mati is buddhi. And accuracy is important in whatever we are talking about. That's the essence of knowledge. That's the essence of wisdom. That's the essence of stability, and is also the essence of intelligence. So therefore, whether it's artificial or human, what we do must have a clarity of thought, a clarity of purpose, and a clarity in its use, whether it's human or artificial. So therefore, unless there is a clarity in what we are doing, it becomes, difficult to understand the context in which we are talking. So having said that, there's an agenda that I'll follow. Have human intelligence. In order to understand artificial intelligence, we need to understand what is intelligence, and thereby what is human intelligence. Then obviously human intelligence has some relationship with the human sensors, because that is where the cognitive abilities come in. So human intelligence and human sensors. Then it's not enough to talk about the sensors. There must be an understanding of how these sensors come together to build intelligence and so on. So there are a lot of neurosciences that will be required to really understand what the artificial intelligence is about, because it has a very close relationship to how the human brain works. And we'll go through a part of that. So you will understand how an artificial intelligence system is built. So we talk about human brain. And once we do that, we talk about what is artificial brain. It follows very closely the way a human brain works. Then we have, like you have natural sensors. I mean, we all have senses. We build, man-made sensors. We also build sensors. So you have an artificial brain, you have artificial sensors, you have an artificial network. They all come together to create artificial intelligence. Like the human system creates human intelligence. Then it's very necessary to understand the integration of technology. Now, there's a lot of technology outside that has to be integrated with what is happening here, which gives us intelligent machines like robots, things like that. There are multiple machines. Your car that you drive is an intelligent machine. Now, then the question is, how do I measure human intelligence? And therefore, how do I measure artificial intelligence? Anything that can be controlled can be measured. So if I can control some parameter, I can measure it. Or if I cannot measure it, I cannot control it. See? So that's the importance. Then we talk about what is artificial intelligence. Now we come, having established certain parameters, we talk about what is artificial intelligence. And then we talk about applications of AI. ChatGPT, which all of you must be using today, that's an AI model. And how does it fit into education, things like that. Then there are obviously challenges, ethical considerations, which you as advocates, as lawyers will be interested in. Then once we talk about artificial intelligence, there is also something called generative artificial intelligence. It's not enough to read a lot of databases, a lot of data sets, gather information and provide in a certain format. Somewhere it will be necessary to generate information rather than getting certain, patterns from a set of data elements. Rather than do that, we must be able to create new patterns, new data, so on. So that is generative AI. We'll see that in detail. So obviously, like you can measure human intelligence, you should also be able to measure artificial intelligence, and therefore say how good it is. So that's the understanding. Then we have AI in education, which is the current topic. And therefore, we also must speak about generative AI in education. These have a lot of connotations in education. Then I have a case study in education and what are the future directions, the challenges, considerations, and so on. So this is generally what I'll be looking at. So starting with, I have human intelligence. Most of it is because of cognitive abilities and the skills that you gather right from the time that you take birth, right? So there are multiple facets of how you define human intelligence. Let's look at some of those facets. The most important is memory. You should be able to remember, the capacity to store, retain, and recall information, and you have short-term memory, you have long-term memory, and you also have working memory, right? You must have heard of RAM, ROM, read-only memory, things like that, in an artificial sense. So similar things happen here. So short-term memory is temporary storage for information that is currently being used. So it doesn't remain with you. Might change the context, you may lose that memory. Long-term memory is the ability to store information over extended periods. And then working memory is active processing and manipulation of information. You see a lot of things, hear a lot of things, you should be able to process that continuously, create new patterns, new knowledge, and so on. So that's working memory. Along with this, you need attention. So you have selective attention, you have divided attention, and you also have sustained attention. So concentrating on a particular object while ignoring irrelevant information. You see a lot of things, but you automatically filter out something that you don't need. All this happens within the human system. You have a divided attention. You manage multiple tasks at various times, so your attention is divided. You still are, making sense with what you're doing. The third is a sustained attention, maintaining focus over prolonged periods. So this is about attention. You need memory, you need attention. Perception is a third point. Process of organizing, identifying, interpreting sensory information to understand the environment. We have multiple sensors. I'll come to that. So each sensor is giving some input. So all these inputs have to become something meaningful for us. So that's the perception that the human mind creates. Problem solving is another important area. Ability to find solutions to complex, unfamiliar situations, and so on. And then decision making. Based on all this that you have seen, you should be able to make some meaningful decisions. So that's for some potential outcomes. If you look at the diagram, you will see the different portions of the brain which are, control different senses that we have. So you have, your speech area, vision, hearing, touch, and they go through different, areas. And you have motor area. You have Broca's area where you have a lot of semantic conceptual systems, right? So that this basically tries to create a correlation between different things that you're doing. You're hearing something, you're seeing something, both are related. So what is that relationship? And so on. So we are all aware of these 5 senses that we talk about. So they are most important. There are multiple senses besides this. Like I said, human intelligence has multiple facets. So what are those facets? You talk about emotional intelligence, right? Or cognize, self-awareness, you realize what you are, how, what are your own dimensions, things like that, You understand where your right hand is, where your left hand is, and so on. When you're doing acrobatic, how the dynamics works. So self-awareness is something very important to understand the own emotions. Self-regulation, managing and controlling one's emotional responses, right? And motivation, empathy, ability to understand and share feeling for others. All these things come somewhere they come back in artificial intelligence and machine learning, part of machine learning and things like that. There are multiple facets of machine learning which talk about each one of these things that we are referring now. So then you have social skills, managing relationships and navigating social complexities effective. Each one of that needs a combination of sensory information and perceived in a different form every time. Then you have creative intelligence, originality, which a chat GPT kind of chatbot cannot do. It's an artificial intelligence application. Originality it cannot do. It cannot create original things. But there are ways of going through that problem as well. We'll see at some point of time in the presentation. Fluency, flexibility, and elaboration, expanding on ideas that you have. This is creative intelligence. We have seen emotional intelligence, you have creative intelligence, you have practical intelligence, adaptability, adjusting to different situations. It needs intelligence. And street smart, practical problem solving skills and the ability to handle everyday challenges. You must be street smart, right? You should be able to understand what the other fellows are doing and change yourself, so on. Then there are several other things going forward. You have linguistic intelligence, knowing a language, understanding a language, speaking to people. You need linguistic intelligence. So you need verbal skills and you need communication. This is where a lot of artificial intelligence happens, where you have NLP, natural language processing models, and so on, which most of the chat GPT models use. So they can converse with you in your own language and so on. It's not necessary that you do it in English. You can do it in any language. Today, chat GPT is available in almost 18 different languages. The next is logical mathematical intelligence. Numerical ability, skill in handling numbers, mathematical operations, logical reasoning. There are several Boolean operations that you do in order to understand logical reasoning. So the ability to think abstractly and analytically. So all these require a different facet of your intelligence, but the inputs to that comes from your sensors, right? Then spatial intelligence, visualization and spatial reasoning, understanding spatial relationships, in space, things which are related in different orientations and so on. And solving spatial problems, like, typically like you're traveling on a boat or maybe on a ship and the ship is taking a turn. There's a flight which is going from somewhere to somewhere. So you need to comprehend the different positions in space and so on. Then musical intelligence, rhythm and musical composition. This needs a separate intelligence, And you have kinesthetic intelligence, physical coordination, and motor skills. Kinesthetic meaning, see, you should be able to know where your hand is going, where you're, even eyes closed, you still know where the hand is, where the things like that. And then motor skills, obviously, you will need to, if you're doing acrobatics, you need your very strong motor skills. There are other human intelligence facets: interpersonal intelligence, social interaction, collaboration, intrapersonal intelligence, self-reflection, personal insight, naturalistic intelligence, nature awareness, environmental sensitivity. Some of these are self-explanatory, so I'm going a little fast. Moral and ethical intelligence, moral reasoning. Something is good, something is bad, is something that I do. Where does it come from? A lot of information that I've stored right from the time that I was a child, and a lot of information that comes from people. So there is a moral and ethical intelligence. The minute I do something wrong, something in me tells me that this is not right. So this is coming from a certain intelligence that you have gathered over time. Then you have integration of multiple intelligences. Now we have seen so many intelligences, and this human system is actually combining all these intelligences to do problem solving. Cultural and social influence. When you do this, there is also a cultural dimension, a social dimension, and so on. Now, where does all this come from? So you need human sensors, right? So let's look at some sensors. Primarily, human intelligence is built on sensory input, processed by various receptors. Receptors are sensors. Okay, there are several receptors on the body. These receptors detect different kinds of stimuli. Eye gets activated on a certain stimuli. Your, hearing gets activated on a different stimuli and stimulus and so on. And these receptors detect different stimuli from the environment and send information to the brain for interpretation and response. Right? Primarily, the information gathering is happening from the sensors. Now let's look at what are these sensors that we have. First is photoreceptors, retina and eye. Okay. Function, detect light and enable vision. Right? Later on, in a different slide, I'll show you the relationship between the human sensor and the artificial sensor, the man-made sensor. So you'll get a better idea of what is happening. Right? Where is the what is the function we have seen? What is the type of sensitive to light levels, responsible for black and white vision and night vision, and cone is responsive to color and detailed function best in bright light. There are 3 types of cones: green, red, green, and blue. Right, and then the mixing happens where you get different colors. As a parallel, if you have seen those, these days you see only flat screens for your TV. In the version before this, you had a tube, right? There are 3 guns at the back, and one gives you red, green, and blue. And then the mixing happens through a hardware where you get different colors and so on, which you see on the screen. So the same principle happens in the human eye. The second is mechanoreceptors. Location is skin, ears, muscles, tendons, and joints. These are mechanoreceptors. Location is, I've shown you. The function is to detect mechanical changes such as touch, pressure, vibration, and sound. So these are mechanoreceptors. And the type, tactile receptor. Sense of touch is a tactile receptor. Baroreceptors located in blood vessels, detect changes in blood pressure, right? So if I have to make an artificial, baroreceptor, is something that measures your blood pressure, which you use right? Then proprioceptors found in muscles, tendons, and joints provide information about body position and movement. If I stand like that, or I don't lose balance, it's all because of the proprioceptors. Okay. Then it tells basically what is the position vis-a-vis and it auto controls the CG to fall within the projected area so that you don't fall. Then hair cells in the inner ear, they provide you the pressure, things like that, and so on. So going further, you have thermoreceptors also on the human body. The location is skin and hypothalamus, which we'll show in the next diagram. Function is to detect the changes in temperature. Even when you go near a hot surface, you still feel the temperature, right? You don't have to touch. And types of cold receptors detect decreases in temperature, and there are also warm receptors which tell you it detects increase in temperatures. Then you have chemoreceptors. Location is tongue. You have nose, brain, and within brain you have medulla oblongata, which has the your chemoreceptors. Function is detect chemical changes. So if I have to make an artificial sensor, you have to do similar things outside, right? Then what are the types that we have on a human body? Gustatory receptors located in taste buds on the tongue, detect taste, sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and so on. And olfactory receptors, you have nasal cavity, detect smell. Then you have central chemoreceptors located in medulla, detect changes in blood, phase values and carbon dioxide levels. And peripheral chemoreceptors, they are, again, I'll show you in the diagram what they estimate the levels of oxygen in the body. Nociceptors, you have location is again skin, muscles, joints, and some internal organs. Detect pain. How do you know pain? So these are nociceptors from potentially damaging stimuli. These are damaging stimuli. There are good stimuli, right? When a vision forms, it's a good stimuli. When you feel pain, it's a damaging stimuli. And thermal nociceptors respond to extreme temperatures. And mechanical nociceptors respond to physical damage such as cutting or crushing. When you cut, you have pain and all that. So that is mechanical nociceptors. And chemical nociceptors, they respond to chemicals released by damaged tissues. Okay, these are nociceptors. These are all human sensors that I'm talking about. Electromagnetic receptors, this is again some human beings may have, animals may have, all human beings may not have all that. Not prominent in humans, but includes photoreceptors and hypothetical magnetoreceptors. Function is to detect the magnetic field. Some animals can detect magnetic field. That is how some animals detect the coming on of an earthquake or something like that. There are other specialized receptors also. Osmoreceptors, they are located in the hypothalamus, detect changes in the osmotic pressure of body fluids. So sometimes you feel, odd with different sensations and so on. There's the body fluids changing pressure will create that. Baroreceptors, like I said, for the blood pressure. Stretch receptors, they are found in stomach, bladder, detecting stretching and fullness. You eat something, you feel very full, So they are stretch receptors. Now here I have given you a flow diagram as to how baroreceptors work. So you can go through. The same logic is used in an artificial blood pressure measuring device. The same thing that happens in a human system is created in a artificial baroreceptor. So impose decrease in arterial blood pressure is an input sensed by baroreceptor as decreased stretch, and there is a effervescent nerve activity. Then it goes into the human system. What is of interest is that the artificial system follows exactly the same method. Here, this diagram I'm showing you to show you the human brain is also formed as layers. This layer business comes back in artificial intelligence. Again, we'll look at that at that time. Those are artificial neural networks. These are natural neural networks. So the human brain is again made of several layers, and there is a certain layer which looks at all these receptors that I've spoken about: tongue, lips, face, eye, thumbs, fingers, all that. That's called as somatosensory cortex, and that's important area which talks about our sensors and so on. And that's the layer which is important to us. Now in this diagram, there's a left motor cortex and the right sensory cortex, and the different, so this is somatosensory map which tells you where exactly these are located in terms of a mapped figure. Now, what have we seen now? We have seen the sensors. We understand a little bit of intelligence. The sensors give you a lot of information, which you gather, which you over a period of time, then relate, correlate, things like that. So how is that intelligence built? So one is various receptors provide the brain with a continuous stream of information about the internal and external environment. So there's a sensory input, there's perception and cognition, there's feedback mechanism. Continuous feedback from sensory receptors allows the brain to adjust and optimize responses, and leading to improved learning and adaptive behaviors. So these sensors are also they are something like online sensors, continuously active. They also give feedback and so on. Then development of skills. Then you have emotional intelligence, sensory input from social interactions, for example, facial expressions, tone and voice. This will again come back in machine learning, artificial intelligence. We'll see that time. But though it is still work in progress. In conclusion, the receptors play a very important role in building the intelligence, human intelligence. Okay. Now, there is something besides receptors as well for human intelligence. What is besides receptors? There are a lot of sensors that gives you the primary mechanism for building intelligence, but there is something besides that as well. It's built from genetic, environmental, developmental, and experiential factors. There's a lot of intelligence which comes from this as well. Then you have genetic factors, inherited traits, your brain structure, function, early development, and so on, prenatal, environment, neurodevelopment. So there are multiple factors which are given here, which are besides the sensors, which also build your intelligence. What I'm trying to show you is, while human intelligence is all this, how do we manage to build all this into an artificial intelligence system is the point. Now, having said that, what is the human brain? First, I have to understand the neuro part of it in order to understand what the artificial part is. So what is the human brain? Is a very complex organ that functions as the control center for the entire body. Everything gets into it's a control system. What is the structure and organization? It has several major regions, each with specialized functions. Right? This discretization is required because that is what we are doing in AI. Right? The brain is again now divided into cerebrum, all this you must have learned, at least the basics in 12th and so on. Then brainstem is extremely important, connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls the involuntary functions such as the heart rate, breathing, digestion, and includes the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. So that's the most important part which transmits the sensory perceptions. Then, of course, limbic system. It includes structures, which essentially improve your memory over a period of time. So this is the way the human brain is organized. And something that is important here is tracing the oxygen consumption. The brain accounts for about 20% of the body's energy. This again has a connotation within the artificial system. And it's just 2% of the body weight. Being just 2% of the body weight, it consumes 20% of the energy that is produced. Right? Now, that's about 0.3 kilowatts or about 15, 20 watts energy per day for an average adult, which is more than 100 times what the typical smartphone uses today. Okay, so smartphones are way ahead in terms of energy consumption. But there is something that is extremely important to know about human brain. We do several functions. We think, we are watching TV, thinking of something else. Then we are doing very complex things and so on. Right? Now, what is the energy consumption of doing in each of these activities? Any suggestions from you? Would it vary? Would it be what? So if I am not doing anything, passively watching some TV, my brain is not working, right? Not working in the sense, not doing active calculations and so on. So while I do this, and just passively look at something, should the energy consumption of the brain be different? Ideally, it should be different, no? It should be different. But human brain uses the same energy irrespective of what you do. Okay? That's the beauty of the thing. When you go to an artificial system, for example, this laptop, which uses about 60 watts, thrice or 4 times what the human brain uses, for normal functions, will use much higher energy when it is doing number crunching, when it is doing dynamic operations and things like that, and it can go up to 200 watts. Whereas the optimization that happens within the human brain is just not replicated in an artificial machine even today. So in that sense, the human brain is way ahead. Now, how does it do? Because of the multiple layers of the brain which it has formed, and there is something else, synapses, you have axons, dendrites, things like that, the nerve cells. And that is what is doing, where the node connection between one layer to the next layer is so optimized, and there are billions of them, that it can optimize on the energy levels. So an artificial system, artificial intelligence also has neural networks similar to a human brain's layering. The neural network layering also happens. So these are this hypothalamus and hippocampus. These are important in terms of memory, in terms of your perceptions and so on. So this is the human brain. Now, going a little further, what actually happens here? Now, this is where the artificial intelligence model connects similarly to what is happening with the human brain. So I have neurons and synapses. Okay, the brain's primary functional units are neurons. Okay, primary functional units in a human brain are neurons, and they are specialized cells that transmit information via electrical and chemical signals. Okay, so neurons are important for the human brain. They transmit the signals, and they consist of a cell body, soma. They consist dendrites, which receive signals, and an axon which sends signal. Right? So in a neural network, artificial neural network, also I have something similar to a soma, then something similar to a dendrite, something similar to an axon. That is how the artificial neural networks operate. But they are mathematical models, they are not physical models. Then synapses are junctions between neurons where neurotransmitters are released to transmit signals to other neurons of target cells. So that's how the signals get transmitted throughout the body. Then you have communication and processing. The brain communicates through networks of neurons, that process information and generate responses, right? Then you have electrical signals, you have chemical signals, neurotransmitters are released from synaptic, vesicles in the, there are different regions of the brain where you have information transmitted between synapses and so on. Then you have functional networks. There are different networks in the brain which are responsible for different functions: sensory processing, motor control, and so on. So you can identify within the brain what controls the motor problem and so on. Now, this is what is also important to me in artificial intelligence. Bulk of the energy is consumed at the synapses. That 20 watts that we are talking about is consumed at the synapses, which are the tiny gaps between brain cells where signals are sent and received. So I have the synapses here, right? And then the human brain is very green, right? Which is not still possible in an artificial system. The adult human brain runs continuously, whether awake or sleeping, or on only about 12 watts of power. And the comparison is a typical desktop draws around 175 watts. And the human brain, like I said, irrespective of what it is doing, it still works around 12 watts or 12 to 20 watts is what it does. But an artificial system is not like that, right? So, for example, the blockchain algorithms, which are software programs, they are power guzzlers. You need to set up power plants to run, blockchain based systems. And what would happen if the energy level goes up in the brain beyond 12 watts and so on? Probably you'll faint. And maybe at a different level, one may die as well. Okay. But an artificial system keeps on drawing more and more power and doing that. The human brain, there is also something called plasticity, an ability to adapt and recognize itself in response to experience and learning. Right? It's plastic enough to learn new things and so on. There is synaptic plasticity and there's structural plasticity. If something dies, it goes automatically and so on. You can do all that in fact, one of the in a robo, a robo word comes from robota. Robota is a Czech word, Czech language, and what it means is forced labor. Robota means forced labor. And Karl Kapek and Isaac Asimov, who write novels, fiction-based novels. Isaac Asimov coined the word robotics from robota. So that is how a robo, its epistemology comes in. Now, once a robo, see, what we do is, we have a egg, right? An egg, natural egg, and you create an artificial egg, which looks absolutely similar. Everything is similar, right? Everything is similar. You can't make out which is artificial, which is, suppose you have that. And now you have to tell the robo to pick up the right one, So how does it happen? This is one problem that I'm posing. The second problem is a human skin, if it is burned, it grows back again, right? I have tactile sensors. How do I make it grow back again? How to replace, so on. So there are things which do not happen like we assume. There are automatic functions. The brainstem and hypothalamus regulate automatic functions essential for survival. Okay, you don't have any control. They keep happening on their own. So that is where in the previous view where I showed the um, your hypothalamus and so on. Hemostasis is another which maintains your body temperature. Okay. Then reflexes. There are several automatic reflexes you have in different situations and conditions and so on. Then integration and coordination. Brain integrates all this and so on. Crosstalk between hemisphere, the left and the right. There's a crosstalk that happens between them. How do you resolve that? So on. And feedback loops. Continuous feedback helps the human brain function. Yeah. So having looked at something of human brain, this is a very short time to introduce something like that. But while we teach artificial intelligence, we do get into all these aspects as a basis for understanding what we will do in an artificial term. So what is artificial brain now? Right? We have seen the human brain. So it's a complete set of software and hardware. There's nothing natural about it. Okay. Software meaning a set of programs, and hardware has something. We'll see what it is. With cognitive abilities similar to those of animal or human brain. It has hardware, but it's functionally similar to what the human system does. Then AI models based on neural networks are structured in ways that are inspired by the human brain. Okay, that is why I've shown you what human brain is. Now, what are the basic units? In a natural system, you have biological neurons. In an artificial system, I have artificial neurons. Right? Then, what are biological neurons? Are they, like we have seen earlier, the basic units of computation. They receive, process, and transmit information through electrical and chemical signals, which pass through that diagram which I have shown, through the synapses and so on. That was biological neuron. And there are billions of them. It's not neurons. There are billions of them in a human brain. Artificial neurons in AI models, artificial neurons are called nodes in a network. I have a chain of wires, and when two wires meet, there's a node that is formed. So like that. So I have, artificial neurons are nodes, which are the fundamental units for an AI model. And these neurons receive input, apply a mathematical transformation, and produce an output. Right? That's it. I'll tell you a simple thing. Suppose I have a square. I have 4 wires joined together. I have a square. I've created a square. Right? How many 4 nodes are there? Right? On the square. 4 nodes are there. I hold one node. Nothing else is moving. Only one node. I pull. What happens? There's a shear that is happening. So the top wire will move forward, and it will become something like a trapezium, right? Or a parallelogram. So that is the transformation that has formed. Now I can write mathematical functions for that transformation that is happening. Right? So this is how I build networks on that and do transformations. So basic transformation, you have rotation, your translation, your scaling, like that, shearing. So yeah. Now we have seen these nodes, which are basically like neurons. in an artificial system. What are the connections? In a human brain, I have a synapses. In an artificial system, I have weights. So that's the difference, right? So synapses, neurons in the brain are connected by synapses, right? My nodes are connected by weights in an AI system. And in a human system, neurotransmitters are released to transmit signals. In neural networks, in an artificial system, connections between artificial neurons, that are nodes, you know, they're all represented by weights. Now, how much shear will happen is the weight that I attach to that node, that weight that I attach to that node, right? That will decide the strength of the signal passing through that. So going further, layers of processing is extremely important. The brain is full of layers which are put together. So layered structure of brain, particularly evident in the cerebral cortex, which is all the sensors and things like that, where different layers are responsible for processing different signals and gives you different information, right? So multiple layers, they are all doing different jobs. And the cerebral cortex is organized into 6 stacked layers. This is the cerebral cortex. You have, modular layer, molecular layer, your external granular layer. There are several layers. There are several cells, and they all get into the axon collateral, dendrites, and axons, and all that. Now this diagram I'm showing, because in AI, when we build artificial neural network, it follows the same principle. The layers, there are different layers, and so on. So you have layered architecture in neural networks, and artificial networks also have layered architecture. They also include input layer, they also have an hidden layer, they have an output layer. In every system, every control system, you have an input and you have an output, right? What is the relationship between this input and the output? Some process that defines this. Okay. Same thing happens here, same thing happens in an AI system. In a human system, we call it a stimuli, the input. And there is an output, right? Signal transmission and activation is the next. There are action potentials. Neurons in the brain transmit signals through action potential, which are electrical impulses that travel along the axon. Right? They travel along the axons which I have shown. And in artificial neurons use activation functions. Now, what are these activation functions? What are those signals that travel through the brain? Maybe a pain, maybe a vision, maybe that's what passes through the axon. In an artificial system, these activation functions are mathematical functions. They are sigmoid functions, they are sine functions, there are all kinds of things. Or they are rectified linear units, RLU as we call, to introduce non-linear. Most of these actions are non-linear. They're not linear. So therefore, you need to introduce non-linear mathematical functions, which happens through that. So this is how the whole system works. This I have shown you. Now, you look at this. There are multiple layers. What I'm interested are in axon collaterals. I'm interested in dendrites, and I'm interested in axons because the signals pass through this axons, right? And these are different multiple layers, and different layers have different functions in the human brain. That's a larger picture. Same thing happens in artificial neural network. This is a deep neural network. I have an input layer. I have nodes. I have all those so-called axons, right? And I attach a weight to this. So this input changes. Then these are multiple hidden layers, which are similar to these multiple layers, right? So what do I do? In a given function, in a certain layer, I'll define a certain activity. In the next layer, I define another activity. Third layer, I define another activity. Right? Together, all these activities create an output for me, maybe vision or something like that. Right? So these individual layers have nodes and so on. Now, one node in one layer getting into another node in another layer, and so on. So your entire learning happens between layers, and that is how the information is processed and so on. So you have an output layer, you have multiple hidden layers, you have an input layer, right? So there's a learning and adaptation. There's a parallel processing. Human brain also is a parallel processing event. And the neural network or the AI system also does parallel processing. Means do multiple things together. Then you have specialized regions. There are brain regions, there are neural network layers, there are feedback mechanisms. Without feedback, nothing happens. Feedback also happens through, the different nodes and how you connect them and so on, right? In ChatGPT has multiple hidden layers. Okay, that is how it generates new information. By collating information from one layer into another layer, and so on. So there's an input that comes in, goes through several layers at the input level. When it gets into it, it collates a lot of information based on what this is, and then gets through the output layer. Now, building a neural network is not sufficient. Where does the input come from to this? So I need hardware, right? So I need man-made sensors now. Human system has multiple sensors. So now I need to create man-made sensors. So what are these? They mimic functions of human receptors. They mimic. Okay, they are not the same. They're trying to act like one by detecting various types of stimuli and convert to signals that can be interpreted by machines, right? Here it is interpreted by the brain. Now we have to make it, interpretation by a machine. So a comparison of human receptors and their artificial counterparts is required, right? So let's see. We have spoken about photoreceptors. Human receptors, rods and cones in the area is a human receptor. How do I make a man-made receptor on that? Digital cameras. The cameras are photoreceptors, okay? Or charge-coupled devices, CCD as we call, or complementary metal oxide semiconductors, CMOS sensors to detect light and capture images. Right? And there are also infrared sensors which can see in darkness and so on. Probably we cannot see in darkness. There are some good things also that come up from the artificial world. Right? So you use a digital camera and use that output from there, which goes to the input here. So I have seen something. Now those layers and their hidden data does something, goes into the multiples for processing, multiple layers, and then outputs through another set of layers. So you have mechanoreceptors was the second one in the human system. Tactile receptors, touch sensors, and baroreceptors, proprioceptors, and hair cells in the inner ear, which make you hear things. That was the natural part. What is the artificial part? Pressure sensors. Okay. Measure force exerted on a surface, similar to how tactile receptors detect touch and pressure. Now, what is this? I'll give you an example. Weighing machine. You have seen a weighing machine? It shows you the weight, the pressure. It's a load cell. Okay. What is you should understand what is happening with these man-made sensors. I'll give you a small example. You take a wire, right, of certain diameter, very small diameter. Take a wire, you pull it. What are you doing? You are adding tensile load. You're trying to pull, no, with some load, right? Or you push that wire, you're putting some compressive load. Or you turn it, you're making some shear load, right? This is what you're doing to that wire. While doing that, what happens? When you're pulling it, its length may increase. Very small, but it will increase, right? And when I push, it may reduce, things like that, right? So now what do? I go to a lab, take this wire, hold it, and apply measurable load to pull it, and measure the extension that happens. So I've got an extensiometer, which measures the extension that is happening, maybe in micron, whatever, right? So I do that 1 kg, 2 kg, 3 kg, 4 kg, 5 kg, and plot the curve, right? So I get, what have I done? I have tried to calibrate this load, against the deflection, right? So this is a strain gauge. So similar things happen, right? The load cell also has a strain gauge. So this is what happens when you want to check your weight. So when you stand on that, something is compressed, something is pulled, which is calibrated, which shows you the weight. So you have artificial sensors, pressure sensors, measure force extended on a surface, similar to how tactile receptors detect touch and pressure. Right? In human body also, it does the same thing. The tactile receptor, and then the axon, neurons, dendrites, axons. Same thing happens here. Microphones, they're also pressure devices. They convert sound waves into electrical signals, analogous to how hair cells in the ear detect sound. Right? So microphone also operates something like how you hear. Then you have thermoreceptors. In human system, you have cold and warm receptors in the skin and the hypothalamus. Whereas in an artificial sensor, you have thermistors and thermocouples. Thermocouples are what? Two dissimilar metals put together, and then you heat, one will expand, things like that, more than the other. So you check how much it is changing in length, and then you calibrate it. Right? So you get the temperature. You can measure temperature. You can measure very high temperatures. You can measure very low temperatures. So then you have chemoreceptors in human beings. You have gustatory receptors, which are taste buds. Olfactory receptors, which are smell, and central peripheral chemoreceptors. In artificial term, you have gas sensors. Some gas is leaking somewhere. You can detect, right? So you have detect specific gases in the environment, analogous to olfactory receptors. Examples include sensors for carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. Those vehicle, what is that? pollution control, same thing. Then your pH sensors measure the acidity or alkalinity of a solution, similar to central chemoreceptors, detecting the blood pH. You can detect blood pH similarly. Then you have electronic tongues, which use sensor arrays to detect and analyze taste. So you can artificially taste as well, right? And mimicking gustatory receptors. So these are array means, suppose I don't use now one wire to measure the load. I have multiple wires and I have a mesh created of that, and then that I use to calibrate. Okay. Then you have nociceptors. Human are thermal, mechanical, and chemical. Artificial are damage detection sensors used in structures, materials, detect some skin is burnt or very rough, very smooth. All that can be measured in nociceptors, artificial. Then electromagnetic receptors, your magnetometers, which measure the magnetic field of Earth and things like that. RFID, which you must have heard many times. RFID are radio frequency identification, near field communication sensors that detect electromagnetic fields for communication and identification purposes. There are many other humidity sensors, barometric pressure sensors, the humidity in this room, all that can be measured. There is a difference. There is something called a sensor, which we have seen till now. There are also what are called as transducers. Transducers convert energy. Sensors convert the physical parameter of a quantity into corresponding electrical output. Right? So I take a wire, and if I pull it, its length increases by some very small amount. Then that length, increase in length, if I convert to electrical signal, becomes a sensor. Okay? And if I convert the energy, it becomes a transducer. So similar things, but there is a difference. And therefore, there is a huge amount of research going on into finding out those transduction elements. What element should I use to measure this? What material should I use to measure it? So suppose somebody tells you, I want to know the surface finish. Right? I want to know the surface finish. How do I measure? Somebody will say, I want to measure the friction. Somebody will say, I want to measure the slip. So how do I measure? So all that is a some kapda. Yeah. So we have, now, here there is a table which tells you generally, not everything, but in a very small way, if I want to measure light level, I have light dependent resistor, which is a sensor, and the actuator is the lights, lamps, LED, displays, fiber optics, all that. If I want to switch off this light, then I need a sensor, light dependent resistor. So that resistor should figure out how much is the lumen capacity of the light and then trigger the light to switch off. So you need a sensor and you need an actuator. Okay. Similarly, for temperature, you have a thermocouple, thermistor, thermostat. You can turn off heater, fan, all that. Right? Force, pressure, strain gauge, pressure switch, load cells, lift jacks, electromagnetic, vibration, position, speed, and sound. There are many more, but I've just shown you one small area. Now the next is, how do I integrate all this? I have seen different elements coming together. Now I have to integrate them. When I integrate them, I get an intelligent machine. Right? How do I do that? Suppose I have let's go back. I have robotics written here, wearable devices. These are wearable devices, automated systems, medical devices, so many intelligent machines. They all come on drones. Your automated guided vehicles. They're all intelligent machines. We'll just see one small example. In a robo, I want the fellow to lift this and keep it there. Right? So what do I need? I need to first of all define a arm, right? An arm that has some joints and something similar to my human hand. Right? I don't need to create the entire human body. I just need to duplicate the hand and make it work like a hand. Right? If I do that, it becomes a robo. Right? Reprogrammable ability must be there. Only then it will be called a robot. Right? Which means now it is doing this job, tomorrow it will replace this with a bottle. It should do. You don't change, you don't say that I'll change the hand and things like that. Right? So we come to what is called a low level automation. There is mid-level automation, there is high automation. So robotics falls under high automation. Now I have to build something similar to an arm. So therefore I have to understand what a human arm is, right? First of all. So how do you define? There's a shoulder joint, there's an elbow joint, there's a wrist joint, there's a fingers, which also have some motion. So, right? So which also means that I have to define what is the degree of freedom. To lift this from some place, how many degrees of freedom I require? What is degree of freedom then? Right? So it's a number of independent coordinates that are required to define the motion. Right? So if I have a motion, if I have to define the motion in x direction, how many coordinates will I require? One coordinate, x. Right? If I want to define motion in y direction, I need one coordinate. If I want something to go in space, then I need all x, y, z I need. If something is rotating in space, then I'll need x, y, z, theta, beta, all that I'll require. Right? So you define degrees of freedom, and then you build a system to have so many degrees of freedom. Now at the joint, there are 18 degrees of freedom at the wrist. Right? Can we really create all that? So what is done in mechanical systems is you build only so much that you require. You can build many things, but cost is a factor. So you don't do all that. Right? And the second most important in intelligent machines is, how do I account for inertia? For example, a human, I run, right? I run. At the finishing line, I can come to a stop. Right? Suddenly, I can come to a stop. Try teaching that to a mechanical device. It'll go overshoot, it'll undershoot, overshoot, undershoot. Thoda baad mein, it will come to a stop. Right? Right? Can you you throw a ball and say, you stop at that point? It's not possible. Right? So therefore, it's extreme. Now you will figure out how difficult it is to control, and position a satellite in a certain orbit, very, very difficult. So you have to do all that in a mechanical system. This has a mass, no? And it's moving at some speed, so mass into velocity, there's a momentum. So this fellow will, if this fellow is here and my robo has to come there, pick this, how do I make it stop at this place? It will go because of its own weight, its own mass, right? Its own mass, its own velocity. So intelligent machines, there are a lot of other things that one has to do. There are many more sensors which detect all this and then get you a precise motion and so on, right? And then above all else, there is also what is called as accuracy, precision, repeatability, and so on, which we don't think. As a human being, we do all that, but we have never thought about all that. But in a machine, they become extremely important. Now, what is accuracy? You know, accuracy is, if let's say I make 3 circles, okay, and if I have to, if the system is, if the robot is both accurate and precise and repeatable, then every time I reach my goal, it should reach the center of that 3 circles. Okay, inner circle, center. If it is only accurate, what will happen? Anywhere it will place, but keep placing it there. If it is not repeatable, it will keep placing all over. If it is precise, it will come inside. Things like that. So these are we don't, as a human being, we don't think about all that, but all that we'll have to be worried about in a intelligent machine. So these are very not they have a lot of technology, and therefore we need to understand that when we talk about intelligent machine, they are not built in a day. They are not. A lot of technology goes into it, and a lot of human anatomy, human systems, they are important to do all this. Wearable device, smartwatches, you all know what all it does. So there are multiple sensors in there. There's a gyroscope. There is a what is an accelerometer. If you measure speed, if you have a speedometer, right? You walk, you have an odometer. You have you run, you have a velometer. You accelerate, you have an accelerometer. So there are, what is that? dt by d theta is what? Your speed, and the first derivative is your velocity. The second derivative is your acceleration. So all that happens in these instruments that we are defining. So what is a gyroscope? I said something like a gyroscope. What is it? Any idea? Any idea? You are driving a two-wheeler, right? To drive a two-wheeler, as long as you're straight, your body is straight, as you're traveling straight, right? What happens when you take a turn? What happens when you take a turn? Your body also goes like that, right? And you maintain the CG within the projected area by tilting yourself, right? So you have done what? You have countered the gyro couple so that you don't fall. And when you turn, there's a gyro couple that comes into play. Okay? I'll give you a different example. Have you seen a aircraft turning? Or have you seen a ship taking a turn? Right? When an aircraft is taking a turn, it goes like that. It doesn't go straight, no? It never does that. Right? What is all that? So these are all gyro couples that are generated, and they are generated when? When are they generated? You have to understand a little bit of mechanics here. There is a vehicle, your two-wheeler or your four-wheeler, which is going straight. Right? How is the crankshaft? You understand crankshaft of the engine? How is it rotating? It's rotating about the horizontal axis. I'm going in that direction, and the engine is mounted in the same axis. So the crankshaft is going in the same axis. Correct? That is rotation about one axis. Right? Now the same vehicle is taking a turn. Right? So I have a second motion about a vertical axis. Right? Follow? I have one motion X, and now I have a motion along Y, because the vehicle is taking a turn about the vertical axis. Then there are two rotations happening on the same vehicle The theory says that there is a gyro couple. There is a motion which will happen about a third axis, not these two axes. The mutually perpendicular third axis, there's a rotation that will happen. That is the gyro couple, right? So what is the third axis? I have one axis that way. I have one axis. So this axis. So it will go like that, right? About this other horizontal axis. Right? Right. In a four-wheeler on a road, I cannot go like that. No, road is not allowing me to do that. So there is no counter that is required in a four-wheeler. But there's a banking that is required while that's a different story. But in a ship and in an aircraft, the medium is not flexible. It can freely roll, right? So therefore, you need something inside which will make it roll the other way around when this couple happens to keep it stable. That is a gyro device. Okay. So all those things are there in this. So medical devices, biosensors, and diagnostic equipment, they're all there, right? Now, how is human intelligence measured? How is it measured? Most of you must be knowing IQ tests, right? There's a chronological age and there is a mental age. Right? The ratio of that, in the olden times, this was used, not anymore. So this is multifaceted. So there are many ways of defining IQ. Right? One of them, mental age is based on intellectual development. The sensors, how you have learned from all these sensors that you have defined, will tell you the human intelligence, right? The mental development. Chronological age is the number of years that you have been there. So when a person's mental age is equal to the chronological age, right, then your IQ is average. You should go beyond that, right? So that is IQ. There are these definitions are contested. So there are multiple other ways of defining human intelligence. So there is Stanford Binet intelligence scales. There are multiple scales available. Besides these tests, physiological, psychological tests, there are also achievement tests, scholastic aptitude tests. All these, they determine intelligence, right? In a different, like intelligence has multiple facets, its tests also should be multiple, no? Something to define my emotional intelligence, something to define my creative intelligence. So the tests are also different. So now, coming back, what is artificial intelligence now? We have seen all this. Now, what is it? So, John McCarthy is the founding person. There are many of them. John McCarthy and Alan Turing. These are the two people who have a big say in what is happening today. John McCarthy, both of them are from Princeton. One is an American. John McCarthy is an American. And Alan Turing is a Britisher. Right? Alan Turing was there much before John McCarthy. McCarthy expired in 10 years back. Alan Turing died in 1950s. He was born in 1912. And there's a lot of work that they have done which is useful for AI. Okay? And Alan Turing devised a test which tells you whether a machine can think like a human being. So many years back, he did all that, right? And their pedigree is very good. They are very well-known people. Though Alan Turing was also known for many other things. In fact, he got into trouble because of that. He went to jail. Things like that. Okay. But later on, somewhere about 2008 or 9, more than 50 years after he passed away, the British government recognized him as a real asset of the nation. He never got the recognition neither when he was alive nor 50 years from that time. And they declared him a national asset, and the Queen then gave him a royal pardon for what he did. Now, what he did is something that you can read. So that, but apart from that, his Turing test is something that is taught in every computer class wherever you go in the world today. And so he theorized. Now, what he did in 1930s, this was in 1938 and 39, that time, he theorized that the cortex of the human brain, at birth, is an unorganized machine. Okay, that through training becomes organized into a universal machine or something like it. This is what he said at that time. And today, you are actually doing that. And based on that theory, he also created a machine, Turing's machine, which in some effect worked like that. Okay, so many years back. So Turing proposed what subsequently became known as the Turing test as a criteria for whether an artificial computer is thinking. And this happened in 1950s. I'll show you something else which is more interesting a little later. Then in 2 years back, we had ChatGPT, reignited that conversation, of Alan Turing about the likelihood that the components of the Turing test has been met. For the Turing test, he had put certain conditions which are the same which are used for AI today, in AI today. So, AI is the development of computer systems that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence. That's AI. Let's not complicate it further. So what are the key components? Like I said, some software, some hardware. Hardware are all those sensors and so on. Incidentally, all those sensors and all the technology of sensors is IoT, Internet of Things. Okay. Anything that is communicating on the internet or can communicate on the internet is a thing. Internet of Things. Right? So I have a camera located somewhere to monitor the traffic. I have something that my wearable device is measuring something and giving it to my doctor, information. So this is also communicating on the internet, no? So anything that is your pen drive, anything that is communicating, my laptop, my mobile, your iPad, touchpad, all are Internet of Things. And therefore, to run AI systems, IoT is an extremely important area. Then you have machine learning, predictive analysis. What is the problem here? I have an input layer, there's a mid layer, there is an output layer. And some input stimuli I give from sensors or somewhere, and then it is acted upon by a lot of data sets, which means information which is provided in those layers between nodes and the artificial synapses, the weights, and so on. Right? It acts upon all that and gives you some related output. The difficulty is once I build this, I have to predict. How do I know what is coming out is right? So therefore, and not only that, I can also predict events which may happen later. Given certain stimuli today, given certain process today, can I predict? Can I predict the rain tomorrow evening? Can I do that? So there's a lot of weather data that is available. All that weather data is in multiple layers of my neural network, artificial network. So there is some input that comes in and you predict. So you need machine learning to do all that. So what is machine learning? It's a subset of AI that involves training of algorithms to learn from and make predictions based on the data that is given. Within that, there are many, supervised learning, unsupervised learning. So you have a control on what it is doing. Then reinforcement learning is a very important area where the emotional aspects are trying to be built into an artificial machine. For example, can it understand anger? Can a machine understand anger? Can a machine understand love? Things like that. Then you have natural language processing, ability of a program to understand, interpret, and generate human language, which is what ChatGPT does. It understand. See, language is very, again, we don't relate it in that sense. We do it most naturally. Language has a context, right? If you hear something without the context, then it may mean something else, right? The advocates do that, right? Many times in the court, they will only present what is to be presented. They won't present the background, right? Once you present the background, the output may be different, right? So languages are like that, contextual. So capturing the context in a natural language processing algorithm is the most difficult. How do you catch the context in what is said, right? So it's like that. So if there are 10 people sitting here and I make a statement, he is good. Who is good? Right? I may look at somebody and say he is good. There's a context that I have to create. That context defines what is right, what is the interpretation. Right? You have what is called as interpretive jurisprudence, and you have normative jurisprudence. Normative may say something, but that interpretive is dependent on you, or on the judge. So that is where the difficulty comes. How do I interpret? So you tell me only half the story, then I'll give you something which is you may not like. So this is the larger picture, the artificial intelligence science and engineering of making intelligent machines. This is machine learning. Algorithms detect patterns in large data sets and learn to make predictions by processing data rather than by receiving inputs, explicit inputs. It creates the logic and creates the patterns, not react to an input. That is machine learning. Deep learning is further. There are many more mid layers that I'm talking about. Uses neural networks inspired by the ways neurons interact in the human brain to ingest data and processes it through multiple iterations that learn increasingly complex features of the data and make increasingly important decisions and so on. Then subset of that is generative AI, an advanced branch of deep learning, where uses exceptionally large neural networks called large language models. This is ChatGPT, generative chat language with hundreds and billions of neurons, those nodes, which means multiple layers that can learn especially abstract patterns. Language models apply to interpret and create text, video, images, and data known as. So you can create images, deep fakes, which you see on the TV. It is all this fellow's job. Okay? So there are several components. There's computer vision, there's robotics, expert systems, deep learning. For example, if I see, I'll give you a problem for expert systems in your area. Let's assume there are multiple judgments in the multiple cases. You analyze one judgment, look at what was the input for that judgment, what was the outcome, that last page, what is that? The main order, which comes at the last page, substantive part. And there is a lot of arguments and counter arguments between these two of 100 pages. Okay? The first page is the problem, last page is the solution. Right? Right? Now, I collect all the similar cases. For example, divorce is a similar entity. And there are multiple cases which have handled divorces. Right? I pick out what was the input, what is the process, what is the outcome. Can you tell me that process for the same input, the outcome was the same? You'll never be able to say. Right? So what I'm hinting at is you can create an expert system now. Given this set of data, given these as the key functions, the functional aspect, process, this will be the output. So I can build an AI system which will actually do the job of the judge. You give him, you tell what is it doing? It's tracking all the cases, all the data in the entire world, creating intelligent patterns from the data that you have supplied, and it is now creating a output. Right? That is expert system. Then deep learning again here. So its applications are there in healthcare, finance, transportation, retail, entertainment, manufacturing, education. Same principle is the same. These are the applications now. In healthcare, I can do transcriptions. I can give a set of problems, symptoms. I can create a diagnosis, and I can suggest medicines. So that is health. There are many other things in healthcare. Medical imaging is there. Like for example, today you take an MRI, you have multiple, multiple X-rays, which you have to, MRI scans, which you have to analyze, right? So can a AI expert-based system do that? I don't need a radiologist. So I will use that as an input. It picks up data, it picks up patterns, AO, sub, and then gives you there are already systems like that available. Similarly, finance fraud detection, algorithmic trading, transportation, retail, entertainment, manufacturing, education. In fact, there is a software available, expert system. What it does is you write down all kinds of inputs that you want to give, or situational inputs, which means what? I'll start with very simple case. There is a boy, there is a girl, right? And then I'll create situations. Boy has parents, girl has only mother, things like that. And then you create situations like that, multiple situations, and you keep writing all that. Those things will be used as keywords, and the AI will create a new story. Right? That also is happening now. So in education, your personalized learning platforms, you must have used Canvas, right? Or maybe it's an LMS, learning management system, or Blackboard is a learning management. These are personalized systems. They keep track of students' profile, they keep track of students' progress, separate out slow learner, fast learner. How does all that happen? It happens through this. Okay. So automated grading, administrative automation, ERPs. ERPs are not AI systems, but they can become AI systems provided you add many more things. There is a very big research that's happening between Sanskrit and AI. Suppose you consider the following shloka from the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yutsaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kima Kurvata Sanjaya. You know, Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. In the that war zone, which is formed of dharma, in that place you establish yourself. Oh Arjuna, he has a lot of doubts in fighting all that. So he says you establish yourself, O Pandava. Therefore you rise, Sanjaya, O Pandava, you rise and win glory. Kima Kurvata Sanjaya, what are you doing? Rise, and Pandavas Chaiva, that Pandava, Kima Kurvata. So that is what he is trying to say. You get up, do your job, do your duty, and so on. That is the shloka. Now, what does in a generic sense, what does it say? It encourages individuals to pursue their goals and strive for greatness. Right? Keep doing your job, your greatness will come. That is what it is. That shloka in a generic sense it is saying. On the field it is doing something else. Right? In the war zone it's doing something else because there is a context there. One of the key applications of NLP is AI, and it's called sentiment analysis. Okay? Sanskrit is a very colorful language and highly structured. There is Amarkosh, which is available, where you get synonyms, antonyms, multiple words meaning the same thing but different shades, so on. So what people are doing is trying to feed the entire Amarkosh as an input to the system, use these shlokas and create the sentiment behind using a certain word. So it means now that for the same shloka, I can create multiple sentiments. Okay. So what could that shloka have meant? I don't know today. I only translate it based on the language. Right? But there is a sentiment with that, which is not exactly as translation. So that is the study, sentiment analysis, which AI is being used to do that. Okay. So sentiment analysis algorithms can be trained to recognize the complex emotions. For each word, there is an emotion that is there. So if I can capture the emotion of that word, then I can do the sentiment analysis of that shloka. So that is the principle. So another area where Sanskrit is used is NLP, natural language processing, like I said, and in the field of machine translation. See, there are two things. Translation is one, transliteration is another. Okay, translation is just word by word you translate. It may not mean anything. Transliteration is where I capture the meaning of that thing. And our languages, especially Devanagari, they don't follow the grammar of English. Right? So how do I capture all that? So machine translation is one which is used. And Sanskrit is a great idea to do machine translation learning. Okay. Then multiple shlokas have been used in AI from the Katha Upanishad, which states what is Katha Upanishad. It tells you what is life, what is death, what after, what before. All that it tells. So capturing that intent, capturing that emotion into AI, that's a great application for education in using AI. And Gayatri Mantra, is a huge idea to interpret in terms of your AI. Om Bhu. Bhu means earth. Bhuva is, your Akash. Om Bhu, Om Bhuva, Om Suvaha. Om, Tatsavatur Viranyam Bhargovadevasya Dhimai. Dhiyo Prachodayat. That Savitra is sun god. So what it says is in everything, I have a brilliance which is attached to sun god, and I pray to that, and you give me that strength and things like that. So these sentiments can be brought out using NLP. Now, coming to chatbots, which are all AI. You must have seen on your site also. When you go to your DYP site, there is something that comes on the right. It says, can I help you? It's a chatbot. So the history is very simple. Today, 22, you had ChatGPT. In 1960s, you had Eliza, the same thing, but lesser capability. 1960s, Joseph Rosenbaum from MIT, who was a professor there, he developed Eliza. And for what purpose? In fact, Turing also developed several. There was a German code called Enigma during the Second World War times. And what he did was, Turing, he decoded that and he used it against the Nazi occupation. So that is how things started. And Eliza is a conversational style program which the professor from MIT developed. And what it did, it's on a PC, it's a software, you install that, and it will come up saying that, oh, how are you, and so on. It keeps talking to you as though the other side is a human being, and you get interested, and then you ask so many questions. It keeps answering back. Happened 63, and why did they do it? During the World War, they used to catch hold of a lot of prisoner of wars, and some of these guys are very well trained not to open their mouth. Whatever you do, they won't open their mouth. So these Americans, they found a way out. Say that you play with this. So they used to play, and before long, they used to know that they have given so much of information that they would otherwise not have given. That is the start of Eliza. Then you had Parry, you had Alexa. Alexa you must have used. Cortana is a Microsoft ChatGPT. Okay. So is a proprietary generative pre-trained transformer. GPT is generative pre-trained transformer. It's pre-trained, models, and is fine-tuned for conversational application like Eliza. Applications using a combination of supervised learning, reinforcement learning from human feedback. I say something, it remembers that, then changes its answers for the next cycle. So keeps iterating on itself. So there's an architecture, there's a training, and there are some capabilities. Perform various language tasks, which this is the use in education, such as answering questions, providing explanation, generating content, translating languages, summarizing text, engaging in dialogue. All this it can do. What can ChatGPT do? Innovative applications in education, enhancing experiences and educational processes, education more accessible, natural language processing capabilities. You speak, it will understand. Speech processing is there. Acts as a virtual tutor, provides homework assistance 24/7, 365 days. Assists in language learning, interactive simulations and role-playing scenario. It can change the role-playing scenario, can make you learn. Helps in preparing for exams. Teachers use it to generate educational content. Researchers find relevant information. In online or blended environment, ChatGPT can facilitate discussions, right, by moderating forums and maintains effective communication. This is what ChatGPT can do. What can it not do? It can also not do many things. It cannot provide emotional and social support, right, that a human teacher or counselor provides. That this fellow cannot do. It cannot fully grasp complex critical thinking and creativity often required in understanding logic. Okay. Then it does not possess a sense of ethics or morals. It doesn't know what is right, what is wrong. Depends on how you use it. Then it cannot provide personalized emotional feedback. It cannot make informed decisions. then it cannot build long-term mentor-mentee student relationships, cannot solve complex problems, cannot handle sensitive personal information. That is about chat GPT. That is not about chat GPT's future versions. Okay, the generative chat GPT is way ahead on many of these things. It can do many of these things. There are some challenges, like I said, ethical consideration. This is for the your profession. Bias and fairness. AI systems can inherit biases present in the training data, leading to unfair or discriminatory outcomes. These middle layers are all in my hand. Know what data I give, what I do, what kind of patterns, data input that I do. So there can be bias. There can be questions on fairness. How fair is the answer? Transparency and explainability. Many AI models, especially deep learning models, operate as black boxes. You do not know what is happening inside. Those multiple layers that I have here, and there are multiple data, I cannot predict. I have done all that, but what information does it give? There is no control. That is the reason I have a problem with that. Right? Then privacy, use of large data sets, especially those containing personal information. For example, on Google, you keep doing some marketing thing, then it will suddenly tell you, this is what you like. Do you like? Where does it? It's all this, right? So it is collecting your information. Job displacement, it can lead to automation powered, job displacement. Autonomy and control, behave, ensuring that AI systems behave as intended and under human control is crucial, right? Especially in high stakes applications as autonomous weapons. If some middle layer wala does some gadbad, it can go and fire something else. Generative AI.
What exactly is generative AI? When new content is created by artificial intelligence, it's called generative AI. This could involve generating texts and images, as well as videos, music, or voices. To do this, you describe in a chat dialog box what you want the AI to create. This description is called a prompt. The generative AI tools provide answers to all sorts of questions, summarize complex information, and generate diverse ideas quickly. Depending on how they're used, they can create short stories, paintings, pieces of code, or even musical compositions. The foundation for this creation lies in large amounts of data that the AI system accesses to identify patterns and similarities. The content produced by the AI is new. It's often impressive and challenging to distinguish from things humans have made. Generative AI can also be misused. In so-called deepfakes, AI is utilized to produce images or videos that seem real. AI-generated texts are also tough to recognize as machine-made. Moreover, the AI can provide answers that sound correct but are actually incorrect. This is called hallucinating. The quality of what's created depends on both the quality of the data used and the quality of the prompts given. To effectively utilize generative AI, we need to learn how to guide the tools with meaningful prompts and use them thoughtfully. Generative AI holds immense potential and can help us in many ways, such as serving as a writing or learning partner. However, the AI should do the hard work, and humans should be responsible for the facts.
Yeah. So generative adversarial networks. So this generative AIs, they have two layers. I'll tell you how it operates. Within those multiple layers, there are two divisions. One set of multiple layers will propose. The other set of multiple layers will dispose. And they start arguing, building a logic, and then saying that this is right. So there is so much of, intelligence built into it. So there are also methods to measure AI, performance metrics, accuracy and error. You predict something, how near is your solution to that, like that. Like human systems, where you can measure human intelligence, you can also measure AI intelligence. So you have personalized learning, which is possible. It enables the curation of customized learning experiences tailored to individual student needs, slow learners, fast learners, all that. Adaptive learning systems, it adjusts the difficulty of lessons depending on who is a slow learner, fast learner, and so on. So that is possible. And intelligent tutoring systems, AI-driven tutors like Carnegie's Learning Mantha provide real-time feedback. These are all professional applications available in the market, and one-to-one instruction is possible. This is personalized learning model. You have education contents, you have education tools, you have education services. So together, they build the personalized learning. There is administrative efficiency possible, automated grading for students, then administrative task management, enhanced engagement, and gamification. There is a there are a lot of video games which are available on your mobile, on PC, and so on. If you give a video game to a child, he will play it for hours together. But if you give him a 15-minute learning video, he doesn't. So what is it that is making him go through a video, a game, and not a learning video? So there are some gamification, game-based techniques. So you're teaching, if I can convert to a game-based technique, then you will be able to learn better. So that is gamification. Now there is a GI in teaching, and see there is a UNESCO report. I'll not go into this, but I'll show you the report. So this is a UNESCO report, Guidance for Generative AI in Education and Research. Okay, it tells you how exactly generative AI can be used in education from a student's perspective, from a teacher's perspective, from a researcher's perspective, and so on. So they have also given a lot of guidelines in order to do this. For example, so this is for researchers. Now, what it potential, but unproven uses, appropriate domains, expected outcomes. So basically, this document, it tells you how exactly to use Chat GPT and generative AI in education from different stakeholders' perspectives. Yeah, virtual and augmented reality. You can use head-mounted devices and create a 3D, along with your learning. Predictive analysis, early warning systems, learning analytics, these are all educational uses. Language learning application. Duolingo you must have used, many of you, to learn foreign languages. Duolingo is a AI-based application. You can learn French, you can learn German. Then speech recognition, AI-driven speech recognition, like Google Speech to Text is an application, assists in language pronunciation and conversational practice. In fact, in Google, you just go to the search engine and on the side, you type something, it will tell you how to pronounce it out. It is all this, right? Then AI in education, accessibility and inclusion. There is nothing like, this fellow doesn't have money, no, he cannot go to school, he cannot learn. This is agnostic of all barriers. So accessibility, inclusion, assistive technologies, personalized learning plans, professional development, personalized training, performance feedback, all that is possible. Content creation, you can create new content, then curate the content that is available, then resource curation, all that is possible. These are emerging technologies in education which are paired with AI. You have virtual reality, augmented reality, and IoT. IoT I have already spoken to you. And this is the description, how it is connected. We have producers computer generated 3D simulation. Value for education is it can be used to enhance student learning, both medical and technical fields, and so on. So this is again a UNESCO based document which tells you what to do and what not to do. Generative in AI, text generation, image generation, music, and you can create new music, new audio. You can put all those notes into an AI as an input, and then the machine combination and you give you a different, music piece. Video generation, design and prototyping, creativity. This is again the implementations. UNESCO again says this is the way to implement generative AI. First you assess, then you plan, then you monitor. So there are different things written there. So maybe when you have time, you can read all that. This is a case study which is used in your Georgia State University, which they have used many of these principles. Objectives were to increase student retention, graduate rates, enhance personalized learning, streamline administrative processes. They are limited, but they've used a full AI base. And they've used AI-driven advising systems, chatbots, personalized learning platforms, and automating administrative tasks, and the results were done. Future directions, developing AI that can perform intellectual tasks that a human can do rather than being limited to specific tasks. Right? Today, it's more or less a specific task based. AI ethics and governance is a very future important area. You have to create frameworks for regulations, how to, for example, generative AI can synthesize your speech. It can pick up your image, create 3D of that, and the entire movie it can create. You have not participated in anything, but from a single, frame, it can create everything. Then your synthesized speech it can superimpose and say that you have now done this, and you will not be able to find. It's being done today. It's not. I'm not telling you a story. It's being done today. AI challenges and considerations, data privacy again, bias and fairness, and teacher training. Teachers need training to do all this. Quality control, ethical concerns, computational resource, and this is education challenges and the potential solution. Again, a UNESCO-based document. What are the challenges and what is the solution? So useful from your perspective. Now, the last slide that I have, having said all this, I hope you have got something from what I have spoken today. But above all this, there is something that you have to understand. We are, as human beings, highly limited. We must acknowledge that first. And Anantam, Vishwam Akasham, Anantam, Visranjayam, Vilokaya, Natam, Na Madhyam, Na Punastava Adim, Pashyami Vishweshwara Vishwarupam. Means what? When Arjuna in that battlefield says, these are all my relatives, this is my brother, this is my sister, how can I kill them? And he drops all his arms and says, I am not going to fight anything here because I'm going to kill everybody, my own people. Right? So what does Krishna say? You are not doing anything. I am doing everything. Right? And he says, Anantam Vishwam Akasham. Vishwa is Anantam. Akasham is Anantam. Visrunjemam Vilokayanatam. This Vishwa is has so many dimensions, that you don't think about all that. And na madhyam na punastavadim. Na madhyam, it has no middle, no punastavadim. It doesn't have any, end. Everything is me. Pashyami Vishweshwar Vishwarupam. Means now you see my real self. And then he shows the Vishwarupam. He says, I am everything. So don't do all this. You do your job and get lost. That is Therefore, what I'm saying is, we may be intelligent, we may be creating AI, we may be creating, but at the end of the day, think that we are nothing. Karta or कोई और है ना? Thank you.
So, as we come towards the end of the session, it was an honor and privilege to hear from our eminent speaker, Dr. Mantha sir. I take this opportunity to propose my vote of thanks. We thank our chief guest to take out their valuable time and grace the event. I would also like to take this opportunity and thank our director madam to give us such a wonderful platform. Also, last but not the least, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Research Foundation of India for our collaborative partner for this event, for uh, rendering the unwavering support for this event. Lastly, but not lastly, to all the participants who have joined offline and online mode as well. So, thank you so much. Thank you so much.